Welcome to From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers, a podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and hosted by Work Defined. Join our AI co-hosts as they dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Let's get your career started.
You know that feeling, that incredibly specific, high-octane cocktail of emotions when you're walking into a new job?
Yeah.
Day one.
Yeah.
It's a very distinct vibe. It's like 50% absolute confidence, like, I'm going to crush this, just watch me. And 50% just sheer terror that you have absolutely no idea what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's the universal professional experience.
Yeah.
That desire to prove yourself clashing head on with, the fear of being found out.
Yes.
You're rolling up your sleeves, you're ready to go. But in the back of your head, there's that little voice asking, do I really belong here?
Exactly. You want to thrive, but you're also hyper aware that everyone is watching you. You feel like all eyes are on you. But here's the twist. And honestly, this is where things get a little less first day jitters and a little more dystopian. In the modern workplace, specifically the remote and hybrid one, it isn't just your boss watching you from across the office. It might not even be a human watching you at all.
Right. We are entering the era of the digital watchdog. And it fundamentally changes that contract between employer and employee. It's no longer just about what work you deliver.
No.
It's becoming more and more about how you're being monitored by software while you're doing it.
So today we're diving deep into the world of workplace surveillance. We're unpacking a really fascinating article by Tony Frana, who's a career expert at Zeti.com. And the goal of this deep dive isn't just to scare you with stories of spy software.
Although, fair warning.
Fair warning, there is a little bit of that.
Yeah, the mission is really to understand the why behind this rise in digital monitoring, especially, in remote and hybrid settings. We need to look at the psychological toll it takes on you as an employee, that surveillance fatigue. And crucially, we want to equip you with the toolkit you need to navigate this or, completely avoid the surveillance trap.
Okay, so let's start by defining our terms here. Because when I hear surveillance, I'm picturing, a guy in a van with headphones or CCTV cameras.
Right, old school.
That's not really what we're talking about in this context, is it?
No, not at all. This is much more subtle and, frankly, much more invasive because it's invisible. When we talk about workplace surveillance here, we are talking about sophisticated software suites installed right on your work devices.
On your laptop.
Exactly. We're talking about granularity.
Yeah.
We're talking about tracking keystrokes, literally logging every single time you tap a key. We're talking about monitoring screen time, tracking mouse miles, taking random screenshots of your desktop.
Wow. I've even read about software that uses algorithms to determine your productivity score based on how active your mouse and keyboard are. So if you aren't moving the mouse, you aren't working.
Exactly. It attempts to quantify effort into these little data points.
Yeah.
And just hearing that probably makes your skin crawl a bit.
It definitely feels like something a hacker would do, not your HR department. But to understand it, we have to look at the other side of the desk. We have to look at the manager's perspective. Why are they doing this?
Are they all just power-hungry micromanagers?
Well,
I mean, in some cases, maybe. But according to the source, the root cause is something they call productivity anxiety.
Productivity anxiety. Okay, let's unpack that. It sounds almost clinical.
In a corporate sense, it kind of is. I mean, think about the massive shift we've seen since 2020. The huge move to remote and hybrid roles. Suddenly, managers couldn't see their teams.
Right.
They couldn't walk past a desk and see someone typing away. They lost that visual confirmation of busyness.
Right. That whole management by walking around method just died. So because they can't see you, they're worried you aren't doing anything.
That's it. They worry about lessened effectiveness. They worry that without that in-office social pressure, people are just, watching Netflix or doing the laundry. So to bridge that gap, to quell their own anxiety, they turn to these digital tools.
To make sure you're accountable.
To ensure accountability, yeah. They use software to verify that you are working the hours you claim to be working.
It's like they're trying to use technology to replicate the feeling of a manager standing over your shoulder. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly kind of sad. There is a massive disconnect here.
A huge one.
Between what managers think ensures productivity and what employees actually need.
The data supports that disconnect perfectly. Zeti.com did a workplace monitoring report, And they asked employees what kind of monitoring actually works for them. And I'm sure you can guess the results.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say nobody voted for please count my keystrokes.
0 votes for the keystroke logger. Shocking, right? What employees want is regular human feedback. They want clear performance reviews. They want to focus on outcomes and deadlines.
Yeah, the actual work.
Yeah. Did I finish the project? Is it good? Great. They also value peer feedback. They want human interaction and clear expectations, not spy software running in the background.
So on one side, you have employees saying, judge me by my results. And on the other, you have employers saying, I'm going to judge you by your mouse movement.
Which is...
No.
That seems like a recipe for disaster.
It is. It's a clash of philosophies. One is output-based. The other is input-based. And that brings us to the psychological toll. Because working under that kind of digital gaze, it changes the way you experience your job.
The source talks about this feeling of scrutiny.
Oh, I get that. It's like that feeling when a police car pulls up behind you on the highway. Even if you aren't speeding, even if everything's perfect, suddenly you change. You're gripping the wheel. You're checking your mirrors constantly. You're stressed out.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You stop driving naturally.
Yeah.
And you start driving performatively. Now, imagine that feeling for 8 hours a day. It's constant low-level stress. And what that does is it undermines mental health. But more than that, it just destroys any sense of autonomy.
And autonomy is huge. It's that feeling of, I'm a professional. I know how to do my job. Just let me do it.
Exactly. When you feel watched, you feel controlled. You feel like you can't work in the way that suits you best. Maybe you're someone who likes to pace around the room while you think. Maybe you like to sketch out ideas on paper before you type. But if the software only counts work as typing,
then pacing and sketching looks like laziness.
Exactly. So you stop doing the things that actually help you do good work just to feed the algorithm.
You're just performing.
Precisely. The source explicitly calls this a creativity killer. If you are being tracked by the keystroke, you're significantly less likely to explore big creative ideas. You aren't going to take risks. You aren't going to do that deep work where you just sit and think for an hour.
No, you're going to perform busyness. You're going to do things that generate data rather than things that generate value.
That is such a critical distinction. Performing busyness versus creating value. I feel like we've all done that at some point. Clicking through tabs just to look active.
Oh, for sure.
But when it's mandated by software, it becomes the whole job.
And I imagine if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'd just quit if my boss did that. You are not alone.
Not at all.
Yeah.
People are absolutely voting with their feet.
Yeah.
Zeddy.com found a staggering statistic.
What is it?
1 in 9 workers have actually left a job specifically due to extreme monitoring.
1 in 9. That's a huge chunk of the workforce walking out the door because they refuse to be spied on.
It signals a profound lack of trust. And that's really the core issue here. Surveillance signals to you, the employee, we do not trust you. And when leadership doesn't trust you, that psychological contract is broken. Why would you stay?
It just creates an incredibly toxic environment, and we haven't even touched on the privacy aspect yet.
Right.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Ames, your host of Signals, a Starbold Studios production. I'm taking bold ideas and real challenges submitted by leaders like you and turning them into powerful conversation with actionable results. Some weeks, I'll react in just 4 minutes. Others, I'll bring on experts for deeper dives. So send up a signal, and I'll throw you a line.
There are serious ethical concerns here. I mean, what happens to that data? Who sees it? We've heard horror stories of screenshots capturing, private banking info or personal messages because someone forgot to toggle the software off during a break.
Oh, my God.
And often, there's no way to opt out. You sign the contract, you get the laptop, and the spyware is pre-installed. It's an incredibly uncomfortable environment where the boundaries just get completely blurred.
Now, I want to pivot a little bit here because while this sucks for everyone, the source makes a really compelling point that this is particularly dangerous for people who are just starting their careers. The rookie tax, if you will.
Yes. This is something I'm really glad the article highlighted. If you're early in your career, maybe it's your first big job, or you're an intern, you are already dealing with what we call double scrutiny.
Because you're the new kid. People are already watching you to see if you can cut it. You have that imposter syndrome we talked about at the top of the show.
Exactly. You are highly visible. You're trying to prove your worth. Now imagine layering digital surveillance on top of that existing pressure. It creates an environment that is actively hostile to learning.
How so?
Well, think about how we learn. I mean, we learn by trying things, failing, fixing them, and trying again.
By experimenting.
We learn through experimentation. But if you're afraid that every mistake, every pause, every, quote, unproductive minute is being logged and analyzed, are you going to experiment?
No way. You're going to play it safe. You're going to do exactly what you're told and nothing else.
Yeah.
You aren't going to try some new way of solving a problem, because if it takes 10 minutes longer, your efficiency score drops.
Correct. It stunts development. It stops that problem-solving growth that's so essential for early career professionals. If you're afraid of being watched, you're afraid of making mistakes.
And if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn.
Simple as that.
And frankly, for the companies, this is a shooting themselves in the foot moment, because young professionals care about culture.
They weigh it very, very heavily. If a company is known for invasive surveillance, they are going to struggle to retain that fresh talent pool. The younger generation is just very aware of their digital rights and their mental health. They will simply look elsewhere.
So if you're a company using these tools, you might be driving away the very future of your workforce. You're trading long-term talent development for short-term activity metrics.
It's very real risk.
Okay, so we've established the problem. The digital watchdog is here, it's anxious, and it's sniffing around our laptops. But we promised our listeners a toolkit. We need to empower you to navigate this. So let's start with the people who are currently on the job hunt. How do you spot this before you sign the offer letter?
This is so critical. You have to treat the interview as a two-way street. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. The source gives a very specific piece of advice. Ask the question directly.
How do you monitor performance?
Simple as that. How do you monitor performance and success in this role? And just watch their reaction. Do they talk about KPIs, goals, weekly check-ins? Do they talk about outcomes? Or do they start talking about proprietary tracking tools and time management software?
If they start talking about time on task rather than tasks completed, that's a red flag.
A huge red flag. And the follow-up question here is just as important. If they admit to using monitoring tools, which, to be fair, some companies do for legitimate reasons, you need to dig into the intent.
Right. Ask them, how is that data used?
Exactly. Is it used for coaching? Like, hey, we noticed you spent 4 hours on this task that usually takes 1. Do you need some training? That's supportive. Or is it used for remediation?
Which is basically HR speak for punishment.
Right. We noticed you were idle for 15 minutes. Explain yourself. That distinction is everything. We use this data to help you versus we use this data to catch you.
Understanding that intent reveals the company's true culture. So you can make an informed decision. Maybe you're okay with some monitoring if the culture is supportive, but you need to know.
Absolutely. You need to know before you walk in the door.
Okay, but what about the listener who is already in the seat? They're listening to this deep dive right now, and they're realizing, uh-oh, my company does this. They aren't in a position to just quit tomorrow. What can they do?
It's tougher when you're already inside, but you aren't powerless. The first step is what I like to call aggressive transparency. You need to develop strong work habits and the ability to self-manage.
Beat them to the punch.
In a way, yeah. If you are constantly communicating your status, hitting your deadlines, and clearly demonstrating your value, the data from the tracking software becomes less relevant. You want your output to speak so loudly that nobody cares about your keystrokes.
So over-communicate. Here's what I did today. Here's the result. Here's what I'm doing tomorrow.
Precisely. Demonstrate value beyond hours worked. Show them that you are solving problems, not just typing. Make your impact visible so the algorithm doesn't have to guess. And then there's the advocacy piece.
This sounds a bit scary. Standing up to the machine.
It can be. But if you have capital in the company, if you're a trusted employee, a top performer, you can advocate for healthy practices. If you know the company uses surveillance, push for it to be transparent. Ask to see your own data. Ask for clear guidelines.
If you're going to watch me, I want to know what you're seeing.
Right. Advocate for balance. Healthy performance and trust can coexist with some monitoring, but they are not substitutes for one another. You can't replace trust with software.
That's a really important reality check. The technology should support the relationship, not replace it. If your manager relies 100% on a dashboard to know if you're a good employee, they aren't managing.
They're just monitoring. And honestly, if you advocate and you perform, and the company still treats you like a suspect rather than a partner, well, remember that 1 in 9 statistic.
Maybe it's time to become one of them.
Maybe. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play. But before you get to that point, just remember that understanding how you are evaluated is not optional. It is a critical part of building a sustainable career.
You can't win the game if you don't know how the score is being kept.
That's a great way to put it. You have to know the rules of the game.
And decide if you want to play. So let's bring this all back together. We're seeing a rise in productivity anxiety from managers, which is leading to this surge in digital surveillance. This creates a massive trust deficit, it kills creativity, and it drives talent away.
Especially young talent, who refuse to work in a digital panopticon. But by asking the right questions in interviews, specifically, how do you measure me, and focusing on output over busyness, you can navigate this landscape. You can find the places that value your brain, not just your typing speed.
It really does come down to that fundamental tension, accountability versus autonomy.
And finding the balance where you can thrive. Because the best work doesn't come from fear.
It comes from freedom.
It comes from freedom.
So here is the thought we want to leave you with today. It's something to mull over the next time you log in. If an employer relies entirely on software to measure your value, if they need a keystroke logger to know if you're working, are they actually measuring your work?
Or are they just measuring your ability to look busy?
And if that's all they're measuring, what does that say about the longevity and the security of that role?
Because if a computer can measure it that easily, a computer can probably do it eventually.
Oof. Now that is a chilling thought to end on, but a necessary one. As always, thank you for diving deep with us.
Stay curious, and maybe check your privacy settings.
See you next time.
This has been From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers. A podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. Each episode, we dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Subscribe to this podcast for free now, so you don't miss an episode, and visit www.collegerecruiter.com to find your next great job.